Okay, guys, it's Dr. Ryan, and today we're going to talk with Chris, who's been a patient of SummaUp for, about 3 or 4 months, about 4 months or so. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience with the clinic. So, Chris, why don't you go ahead and give us a little information about yourself, where you live, what you do, some of your hobbies, what your family life is like.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Ryan. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm Chris. I'm an executive, very busy schedule, very busy work life. I also am a father of 6 boys, so very busy home life. And I'm an active tennis player. I play competitively locally, former basketball player that transitioned to tennis when my knee got bad, probably familiar to some other people out there. So I've led generally an active lifestyle my whole life. Some other things I do for fun, I enjoy different types of food. I love fine wine, which I know you're not that happy with the fact that I do enjoy a glass of wine every once in a while, but I do. And I enjoy living at the beach. So I live close enough that I can walk to put my toes in the sand on a daily basis. It's an important part of my life. So that's me.
That's wonderful. Thanks for that, Chris. And I do want to preface it before I go into my questions. I do want to say that it's okay to drink a glass of wine occasionally. It's just
good.
Long term, it's probably not the healthiest for like daily, but which you are by any means.
I do it on my cheat meal. I follow the program.
Good. Okay. Well, Chris, why don't we talk a little bit about your experiences prior to joining the clinic? So what were the problems that you were trying to solve, particularly in terms of your physique and overall health?
Sure. So I've traditionally had back issues my whole life, L4, L5 issues, degenerative back. I've also have a left knee that gives me problems, and I'm actively competitive in tennis. And so I'm on the court and noticing that I'm losing half a step or a step. I'm just noticing as I'm getting older, I'm slowing down. I also noticed that, I generally just don't sleep well. I don't feel great. I have pains in places I didn't have pains before. I feel bloated at times. I've been gluten-free for probably a decade. So, that was one of the things I cut out early from noticing back issues. But I just felt like that wasn't enough, that I was deteriorating at a faster rate than I really wanted to. And so I was looking for something that could help me figure this out. I wasn't really sure when I started my journey. When I started researching and trying to figure out how to, I guess, slow down the aging process, hopefully at least maintain where I am, if not improve. And so that's kind of what started me on the journey to find you.
Great. And you mentioned some of the things that kind of pushed you into making this journey, as you talked about the back pain, the knee pain, not winning as many tennis games, or feeling that you're not putting out your best effort, and then maybe like energy levels as a whole. But outside of athletic endeavors, does those affect you in other ways in your life, particularly in terms of your career and family?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had the typical 2 p.m. crash that you hear about, like, I do work a lot, so I would find towards the end of the week I would be tired. Definitely trying to keep up with 6 boys was always a challenge. And so, having enough energy for all of that definitely was a concern. And also the mental aspect. It's important to me to keep a high level of cognitive skill for a long time, and not just, on a week-to-week basis, but just period. I do have some family history of Alzheimer's and family history of heart disease. So I'm watching that, and I'm very aware of any kind of decline that I would have, any memory or just cognitive ability at all. And so it was a part of the consideration for looking for something. Wasn't just the physical, but also the mental and the stamina.
Yeah, it's a big concern as we enter into our 40s and 50s, and we see colleagues or peers or relatives start to succumb to stroke, heart disease, cancer, dementia, early signs of those things popping up in those individuals. And maybe just looking at your parents and saying, hey, and this may not necessarily be in your situation, but in other people's situations, I don't want to necessarily end up the way that they did, right?
No, absolutely. My father died at 46 from a rare blood disease that I don't have, and that the markers that lead to that I'm watching. And then my mother's been overweight her whole life, and so they're 2 really good examples of who I didn't want to become. So I think that you're probably right, that's probably true for a lot of people out there that would be interested in this type of a program.
So I kind of have a result of what you were feeling, but was there a specific inciting event that kind of pushed you over the edge?
So I knew I was looking for some type of program, but I wasn't sure about this one. I'd been doing my research, and this one, how phones are these days, but it noticed me talking probably to someone about looking for this type of thing, and then here comes Facebook feed, and your program popped up, and it seemed to hit on the things I was looking for. So I'm like, well, let me just check this out. And I was looking around at other even local programs here in the area if I wanted somebody locally. But what really interested me about your program was the idea of, hey, let us just do your blood work and look at it and see what we see. And so I could start the whole thing without really that much of a commitment. I needed that blood work done anyway. And I needed to kind of get a good level set of where am I from a health perspective. And so just sitting down with you and going through my numbers, first of all, was eye-opening. Right. It was a little bit staggering to me to see, oh, there are things in there that, even though I felt like I do a decent job of staying in shape and I don't eat a terrible diet, just generally speaking, still you saw my numbers. And there were some things in there that were really concerning that if I had let go would have developed into potentially a life-threatening type of development. So that to me was really what pushed me over the edge to go ahead and do it, is when I sat down with you and just looked at my numbers and you said, oh, by the way, we can help with all of this and it's going to be okay. That was like, okay, I really do need to do this.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that a lot of the chronic illnesses that most Americans succumb to, heart disease, stroke, cancer, dementia, as we mentioned, diabetes, are treatable or reversible, right? If you enact the right combination of diet, exercise, supplement, and medications, you can prevent yourself from having them, stave them off for as long as possible, and extend your life. And that's really the crux of what the clinic is. Okay, good. Well, let's kind of transition over to how you, some of the changes you noticed after you joined the clinic. And before I get your answer, I'm just going to brag on you for a bit. You've made some phenomenal progress in a very short period of time. And so as we looked over here, your lipid panel indicated that your LDL, which is 164, had dropped to 116. Your homocysteine levels, which weren't terrible to start, but not optimal at 11.3, dropped to 9.0. And your hemoglobin A1C, now again, you're far from being diabetic, went from an okay hemoglobin A1C to a phenomenal one at 4.8, all within the span of just 3 months, which I think is really, really cool. And then from a physique standpoint, we lost 10 pounds, which, as the pictures will show, came primarily from fat. You can look at where you were when you started, which, as you mentioned, you didn't look bad. You were kind of athletic, right? And it's not like you had a terrible diet. Right now, you just look so much better. Your body fat has just dropped dramatically. And so this is just, it's very, very good. And as you had mentioned, or you mentioned me before in meetings, we're not done. You have quite a bit to go, but it's remarkable how much you've accomplished. But in your words, what changes have you noticed?
Probably the first change is my mental focus, my ability so instead of being so focused on like the goals that I've set for myself, which are important, I have goals and I set them and I try to have achievable goals and I try to work towards those. Probably the number one thing I've kind of adapted my thinking to is really enjoying this entire process. So I've had fun with the workout program that you put together for me. With the diet, I just make it a fun thing. I adapted it just a little bit to my preferences, with your help, by the way, by just, chatting with you and saying, hey, I'm not liking this. Is there any alternative? And you're like, well, you can try this and you can try that. So I found the diet that works well for me. As you saw in the pictures, I've lost a ton of weight, not intentionally. I never felt like I was really starving. Through the process, when I would get hungry, you'd say, well, have another protein shake or whatever, and then that would help. So that idea of really enjoying this entire process, enjoying the routine in the morning, getting the cardio in, getting the supplements in, getting the meds in, and then throughout the day, staging in the diet and then getting the lift in the evenings, like that whole process on a daily basis, getting that routine down has been something I've really enjoyed. And then as I've enjoyed the journey, then along the way, goals just seem to pop out. There was one 4-week stretch where I increased my bicep weight per arm by 10 pounds in like 4 weeks, which was unbelievable.
Yeah.
In the same reps. So 10 reps, 3 times, went up 10 pounds. I couldn't believe it. My chest went up 35 pounds in 4 weeks. But it was just as a result of doing the program, following the routine daily journey, and then the goals just kept popping out. And so now I feel like I can even set further goals, like even harder goals, because I know those just kind of happened. So that's very, I don't like the word motivation because I do think it's fleeting, but it is very encouraging.
Yeah.
When you're seeing these things just happen naturally, just because you're doing something that, by the way, feels good. Like I feel great. My body feels better than it's ever felt. I feel like I'm in my 20s again. I feel like I'm back to that competitive basketball player level, like not quite with my knee, but I feel like I'm there physically everywhere else, that I can get out and compete on the tennis court and never get tired.
And so, I mean, obviously, this is translated into your athletic endeavors. It seems like you're doing much better on the pickleball, on the tennis courts.
Pickleball's a bad word, but yes, the tennis courts.
The tennis courts. And it looks like some of the joint pains are improving to a certain extent. And most importantly, your energy levels are higher too, because that was a big issue as well. What about some of the changes you've noticed in terms of your business? The biggest thing you noticed was you had like a slump around 2 p.m. Sometimes you felt that your mental acuity, mental clarity wasn't up to par. I mean, it has to be being a high-performing executive like you are. How is that?
Yeah, no issues there really at all anymore. And again, it's not that I intended for that to be the result. It just kind of naturally has happened. I'll look up and it'll be 5 o'clock already. I'm like, oh, I never really felt like I crashed. And I try to break my day up now that with the program, that I have this routine where I'm not always just sitting at the desk either. I'll hop up and I'll do the protein shake, and I'll hop up and it's nice. It's convenient for me because I actually have my weights in my backyard, so I can pop out there and I can do the 25 minutes that are required from the lifting program at 3 o'clock, sometimes on a conference call, get that lift in, get back to work. So that whole process in developing that routine, I think also helps with the energy level. But I think just being at this level of healthy, when you look at my numbers, just being naturally that level of healthy leads itself to me just having no crashes. The diet definitely helps because it's kind of spread out in a way that I don't really have the crash from the, major sugar intake or carb intake, right? It's a nice steady feeding of calories. So the diet helps, but I think the supplement program also helps as well. Probably the whole thing helps, but.
Yeah, I mean, when you combine hormonal optimization, the supplement program, eating appropriate amount of calories, using, appropriate foods that decrease inflammation, and, as you mentioned, finding a good exercise program, it has a very synergistic effect across many different areas, which is wonderful. Yeah. So I'm really happy your energy levels have improved significantly, and it sounds like you're much more active, and you're pursuing more and harder goals at work, which is perfect. What about your relationships with your family? So you have 6 children. The team and myself, we've definitely noticed the changes that you've made in terms of your physique and your biomarkers. Mm-hmm. But what has your family said? What have your friends and colleagues said?
Less irritable, slower to, reach a point of being frustrated. Mm-hmm. With the kids. I definitely have noticed that, and they have too. I think that I could always kind of keep up with them anyway, generally, because you saw my before photos, I wasn't in terrible shape, but now they really can't keep up with me, which is kind of fun when your 20 and 19-year-olds can't compete with you anymore if we go for a run or something like that. So definitely feel like I can keep up with them, and I feel like I'm a better parent with the energy level being where it is, and with the kind of just feeling good about my body, not having the body pains, which I think do then lead to you, having mental, a shorter fuse, because if your body's in pain, that's kind of a reaction. I feel no pains anywhere, no lower back pains, really no knee pains, unless I do something silly, which I do sometimes. No elbow or arm issues from tennis. Wow. My serve I was clocked at 130, which has been a long time since I've had that serve back. And it's, my serve's feeling great. My arm doesn't hurt. And then my relationships are great. My friends are all coming over tonight. Actually, it's our once a month Friday night friend gathering, and I am looking forward to it. I'll be cooking a huge meal for them, but they'll all as well. They've commented on, wow, what's changed? What are you doing? Like, I answer this question all the time. Anytime somebody hasn't seen me for a month and then they pop back in, they're like, what is going on? You look strong, you look healthy, you look happy. What's changed? And I tell them the story, and it's always interesting to watch, because you almost see their response going to, oh, like almost like they're sad because they know you have to make a commitment to do this. Like, you really do. And anybody that's watching this that is kind of on the fence, just know when you do make the commitment and go all in, just be committed, stick to the program. And if you do, you can see, 3 months, you can see massive results in that amount of time. And then for me, just continuing to do this is a new lifestyle for me. I don't feel like I'm on a diet. I feel like this is how I'm going to live, because I feel so much better, just generally speaking. And I can actually see myself getting younger. I can feel myself getting younger. And I know that's going to translate to your goals for me, which is into the 80s, still feeling good, and then skyrocketing beyond that.
Yeah. And, and definitely 80s, but if there's a lot of people in the longevity and anti-aging field, and I also agree with them, that feel that our barrier may be the 120s, 130s, 140s, and why not? Well,
that's what I'm counting on. I'm just saying, you get me to the 80s feeling good, and then we figure out the rest from there.
We're definitely going to do that. And the other thing that I'm glad that you touched upon is, and I've noticed a lot of other patients, that element of social interaction after they're fully optimized, they just are so much open to more open to meeting people, to engaging in corporate events. Some of my patients are motivational speakers, and when you don't feel your best, when your energy levels are off, or maybe when you're not very confident with your appearance, you just don't want to take those engagements, and that can be a big deal, and particularly in terms of career advancement, or that might be a part of their business. And I'm really happy that that aspect is improving significantly.
Well, it's nice to hop over to the beach and take my shirt off now.
Yeah,
I feel fully comfortable doing that. So
that's a really big deal. Yeah,
it's a huge deal. You feel confident when you're out there. And I can see that too on stage. I do a lot of public speaking as well, and I do feel like I am much more confident in front of a crowd now. I feel no really sense of dread about that. I haven't mentally ever, but there are times in your life where you feel like, oh, I don't look the greatest, but I do feel much better about that too.
And that's really, it's really amazing, because the crowd resonates with the speaker, right? And I mean, and you can obviously attest to us looking at speakers, they're very comfortable with themselves, and you engage with that individual, and you're like, wow, that's a great speech. And the converse is also true when you have someone that's nervous and anxious, and there's almost like a visceral reaction you feel when you feel sorry for that person. And people don't like being sorry for other people. They want to have a good experience, right? So I'm glad that improved. So you kind of touched upon this, but I do want you to kind of give like a clear answer. What would you tell someone who is watching this now and is uncertain about joining the clinic?
Yeah. Do the intro, get your blood work, and just have the conversation with you about what you see. Because to me, that was, you weren't trying to sell the program when you went through that with me. You were just looking at my numbers and telling me, well, these are the concerns that I see. These are the markers that are not great. These are things you need to fix now. And at the very end, you were like, okay, I can put together a program for you, or anybody else can, but you need to do this. You need to fix these numbers. And you saw the numbers in the video. There were things that, LDL for me is, I know I've got a history of heart disease in my family. And I have, my grandfather had 2 quadruple bypasses, died twice on the table, was brought back twice. I know that's a concern for me. And the fact that you were that open and upfront with me in the first part of the program, but also didn't put any kind of sales pressure on me to go to the next place, I would suggest anybody that's watching that is on the fence, go do that. It wasn't that expensive. It gets you your numbers you need to see anyway, and it's really going to give you a good understanding of your current physical condition and the things that, if you don't address, are going to lead to a sooner rather than later medical emergency, most likely for you. So start there, and then if you get through that and you realize there are some things you want to fix, this is a great program. I've had an amazing time. You give me more attention than I could have ever expected. The fact that I have the ability in an app to just chat with you and then I get a response. I mean, I got a response one time, like Sunday at 9:30 in the morning when I was chatting, and I'm like, I can't believe you're that responsive to my questions. You know, it feels like a very personal relationship that I have with you. I feel very connected to my doctor who's helping me be the best version of me. And anybody that's looking for that type of, you know, not only accountability, but just partnership and assistance and question answering anytime I have doubts, anytime I'm just not enjoying something and you're like, well, let's try this and let's try that. That's been wonderful. I thank you for that. And I would tell anybody asking, I don't think you can find a better program.
Well, that was quite the statement there, Chris. I don't know if I can accept all that, but what I will say though is I'm glad that you touched upon the consultation, because, you know, at the end of the day, that the initial medical consultation is a consultation, right? And so individuals that are interested in the clinic, as you mentioned, I go in, I talk about their concerns, and for me, it's about providing a solution and ensuring that works for that person. And if it works, great, enroll in the clinic. But if it doesn't, well, awesome. At least we found, you know, we found that we may not be the best fit, and you'll have an opportunity to check out other clinics or other providers, right? But the key thing is just getting to the crux of the problems, and then just, you know, giving you options, right? And so I'm glad that you touched upon that. Okay, well, Chris, I really, really appreciate you sharing your experience and spending the time today. And I want to thank you again for being a patient of SummaUp.
Well, probably a patient for life. This is just the beginning of my journey. And I thank you, and I encourage everyone, you know, if you want to be the best you, and you want to make it to 150, sounds like a crazy number, but if you do, or want to go for it, want to try, sign up.